A recent study conducted by the National Commission for Civic Education suggests that most Ghanaians would like to see more restrictions on the media. The research conducted in 72 districts across all the 10 regions measured the public's perception of the work of the Ghanaian media. So what types of restrictions are we talking about? Wouldn't that create some limitations to how far the media can go in search of information? Is it key to making the media more objective? Will there be an essence for the repeal of the criminal libel law if such limitations are placed? This is today's big story with me, Aisha Ibrahim. The research conducted in 2014 also sought to assess the media as an institution in supporting Ghana's democracy. 58.8% of the respondents to this question believed the media was promoting democratic stability and professionalism, whilst 34% thought the media does not exhibit competence and professionalism. However, a senior lecturer at the School of Communication Studies, Professor Audrey Gajakpo, is questioning why 55.5% of these respondents praised the media for doing well while asking for restrictions at the same time.
Journalists should be their own mouthpieces when it comes to their protection, not leave it only to the Media Foundation for West Africa or the NFC or other people. I think that the GJA has to be much stronger on this. I suspect part of the reason that they are not as robust as they ought to be is a negative comment I'm going to give, because I almost feel that, having said that people are very positive on the media, I think they're too kind about the media. The media are also co-opted, and that's the reality. They are politically co-opted. These days, politicians don't have to exert hard power and force and throw you in jail. That's why our indices will suggest that we're doing well with press freedom. No sensible politician is going to clamp down on the media in an obvious manner. But they use what we call soft power.
Some media personnel have been brutalized and assaulted in the line of duty. So these are also some of the issues that have attracted so much attention. And some experts are asking for media literacy lessons for security personnel to curtail this. Let's listen to Professor Kakari.
The majority, or a very highly considerable number of the perpetrators of physical attacks on journalists are members of the security agencies. That's the sadder aspect of it. Because they are the ones who should safeguard attacks on any citizen at all, any physical violent attacks on any citizen. Now, Ghana is, in terms of the international index, seem to be having press freedom. Yet, we do know that these incidents we are talking about, as violent attacks on journalists in Ghana, are much higher in Ghana than many other African countries. So again, what is it? I think one of the ways in which this may be minimized is for the police training institutions, the security training, the agencies that train security people to include some media literacy courses in those training activities. Without the media, the police work will be very difficult, almost impossible. You know, so I think that that's where it should begin. It should begin from a reorientation of attitudes by the security agents. But again, we may say that also in other aspects.
So one critical role also of the media is the watchdog role. Has the media lived up to expectation on that role? Well, according to Executive Director of the National Media Commission, Ambassador Cabral Blair Mihir, he believes the media has handed their agenda-setting responsibility to political establishments and institutions.
There's an enabling environment for the media to hold governments accountable and that is guaranteeing the freedoms that they enjoy. If you look at the history of this country, there was a period when the state-owned media were almost like mouthpieces for whoever was in power. So to that extent, they were denied that environment, the freedom and independence to operate. Today, even the state-owned media have a constitutional mandate to hold governments accountable. Are we doing very well? I'm not too sure. Sometimes we are abandoning our role of setting the agenda and allowing other forces to set the agenda. And when that happens, then you stand the danger of losing out on your constitutional obligation.
Let's do some analysis now. And Suleimana Barima is the Executive Director of Media Foundation for West Africa. Good evening, Suleimana. Many thanks for your time on today's big story.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Now, critically, there are those who say the media in Ghana has not done bad. But to hear people still demand some more restrictions, it's like going back to the military rule era and advocating for restrictions in media freedom. How do you see this?
Well, thank you very much. I think there are two separate issues. One is about press freedom or media freedom.
Right.
And the other is what the freedom should be used to do.
Exactly.
And I should say that when people advocate for press freedom, it is based on the principle or the foundation that when the media are free and independent, they can be very powerful agents for democratization, very powerful agents for good governance, for accountability, and for transparency. I think what we have seen a lot of in Ghana is the first part, which is the press freedom.
Right.
And what many are concerned about is whether or not the media, we are seeing what a free and independent media should be doing.
Right.
And I think that is where the big concern is.
And from where you sit, do you think the media is seeing what press freedom is all about and making use adequately, using it adequately?
I think to a large extent, press freedom, yes, because as you know, on a number of national ratings, Ghana happens to even be doing better than some of the well-consolidated democracies. But I think the difference is that in those parts of the world, you have the media being very critical. Politicians are afraid of the media because whatever they do, there is a tendency that it will come out and the public would know and there will be public uproar and so on and so forth. Now, in Ghana today, I don't think we are seeing what we all expect the media to do. I have said that, look, if you listen to many of the morning shows now, as somebody said, they have just literally become megaphones for MPP, NDC propaganda.
Right.
All you hear is MPP, NDC, and it's about no scrutiny. It's just about opening the airwaves and the microphones for people to spew out political propaganda. And I don't think that is what we would want to see. The other bit that I am increasingly concerned about, and I think that part of the deterioration in the media landscape should be put squarely on the National Communications Authority.
Right.
I think increasingly it must be worrying to every well-meaning Ghanaian how the NCA is just turning out frequencies to active politicians who definitely will use the frequencies to do political propaganda instead of using them for what the media should do for our democracy.
So how would you describe current controls and restrictions? Would you say there are any, and if there are, and that we need more?
I didn't hear the first part. Is it about restrictions? I'm
saying that currently, do we have any restriction or control over the media? And if there are, do you think we need more?
Well, I wouldn't say that there are so much restrictions, even though there are softer restrictions. It would be deceitful to think that there is no form of censorship that happens, particularly in the state-owned media, even as we think there has been improvement in terms of how they cover both government party and then opposition parties. Apart from that, we always hear about the physical attacks on journalists, even to the extent that people in the presidency now commit attacks against journalists and go scot-free. And I think that all those are part of restrictions, even though it wouldn't be in the legal realm as exists in other countries. So in as much as we are doing well in terms of press freedom, there are issues of restrictions that we all need to be worried about. And I don't think that there can be any situation that would justify any imposition of further restrictions or even any form of restriction. I think freedom is all that we want, and if people feel that we are not getting value for the freedom that the media have, it's about advocating for the media to do well. It's about supporting the media to do what they have to do, rather than thinking of further restrictions.
And so what are your thoughts on promoting democratic stability and professionalism? Are Ghanaian journalists up to the task?
Well, I think that at some point, if you asked me, I would have said, well, it's 50-50, but now I'm increasingly getting quite disappointed. As I said, tune into the radio stations every morning, and it's as if the politicians have bought the airways and are using it for whatever they want. And this includes both big and small media organizations. Apart from that, as I said, I think that it must be worrying to everyone the extent to which the NCA is giving frequencies to politicians. And it appears to me that when the MPP is there, frequencies are given to active MPP people. And when the NDC, now that the NDC is there, a lot of our members of parliament, a lot of constituency and national executive officers are owning frequencies. And quite clearly, you can't be talking professionalism to many of these stations because they were set up in the first place to do the bidding and the agenda of the owner. And I think that not too long ago, there was this discussion about having transparency in the allocation of frequencies. And that, I think, is a big issue that we all need to pick up.
If you listen to one of the sound bites we played, Cabral Blair Mayor accused journalists of giving their watchdog role to to politicians. Do you share same view?
No, I don't at all, because I don't see, in as much as I agree that journalists are not playing the watchdog role, the bit that I wouldn't support is saying that the watchdog role has gone to politicians. I don't think that politicians are playing that watchdog role. Not even Parliament, that is supposed to be playing that role, is playing that role.
Perhaps because the politicians are now setting the agenda, that's why he's making that comment. You don't think so?
Yes, setting the agenda, yes, I agree, because we are being fed MPP, NDC propaganda now, and day in, day out, from morning to evening, all we are listening to, all we are hearing is just the populist debate by both, especially MPP, NDC activists. And because journalists are not also interrogating the issues, and it's just about, okay, it is your turn, say what you have to say. Once you are done, it is the turn of this other person from this other party. They also say what they would say. That is all that we are being fed. And so it is what the politicians want the people to hear and the people to think about. That is what they do, rather than the media being those, or journalists being the ones setting the agenda and driving the national conversation. And I think that that is extremely worrying and quite disappointing.
Mr. Barima, what can we do to reverse this trend? It's obvious all of us are worried about this.
Well, I think that we first of all would have to continue to express concern. Secondly, this whole issue about frequencies to politicians, because once it is the active politicians who are setting up the radio stations, you cannot, because their intention is not to make profit. Their intent is just to make sure that they have their messages across to their constituents. And usually it is a propaganda where you can't interrogate it and so on and so forth. The other bit is that I think institutions like the NMC must be very active and actually accept themselves given the constitutional mandate that they have. Of course, NGOs like us have a role to play, and definitely the media owners, those, the business ties like the multimedia, the Despite Group, and so on. I think they all need to sit up and say, look, yes, we want to make money, but we must be making money in the context of promoting national development, rather than thinking of making money, thinking of having listeners, MPP, NDC, so long as their people are listening to us and we can make advertising revenue, that's all that we care. And I think that at the end of the day, we all need stability for these and businesses to thrive, and therefore we need to be concerned about the role of the media in the political stability of the country, the role of the media in good governance, the role of the media in job creation, and so on and so forth.
Well, we're extremely grateful to you. Suleimana Barima is the Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. Now, Parliament in 2001 unanimously repealed the criminal libel and seditious laws, which had been used to incarcerate a number of journalists in the past. Now, the Ghana Journalists Association at that time described old law as inconsistent with the 1992 Constitution. Several senior journalists at the time, including Kweku Bako Jr., had pushed for the repeal of the old law. So how is that after 14 years of repeal of the old law, some Ghanaians still want some restrictions to the work of journalists? Well, let's do more analysis. And Tanko Mohammed is a media law lecturer with the Ghana Institute of Journalism. Good evening. We appreciate your time on today's big story.
Good evening, Aisha.
Would you say it is normal in 2015 for Ghanaians to want to see more restrictions in the media?
Well, I am not surprised. And I say that for there's a number of reasons. But let me just give you one. The media is supposed to be the eyes and ears of the public. And therefore, whatever the media does is supposed to be a reflection of what society expects them to do.
Right.
Now, if you have a situation where the media is seen by society as doing something that they, in one way or the other, disagree with, that's going to make them feel a little bit disgruntled about the way the media goes about things.
Right.
And that's when they will be thinking, oh, if they are going to be behaving this way, maybe we need to find another way of getting them to fall in line. That you would see people wanting to demand that. But it's not a good sign. It's not a good thing when you have the very public that's supposed to support the media asking for the media to be regulated. And it happens because of a number of reasons. And one of the basic reasons is when the media starts ignoring their basic professional requirements. In other words, the code of ethics of the media.
Right.
So every organization has its own code of ethics, code of conduct. The media has its own. And when you look at those code of ethics, basically it reflects some of the good things that the public or the society wants to see happening. And so what they do is they put it in the code of ethics to get the media to be playing along. So, for instance, issues about sensitivity, issues about respect for people's fundamental rights, all those things. When you see the media, when you have the media preaching some of these things, the public thinks, well, hang on, why are they doing these things? Is it because they're doing these things because they're not being regulated? Now, what then would happen is that when they push and push and push and push and they show their frustration, you would have, of course, the policymakers wanting to jump onto that bandwagon and say, well, the public is asking for regulation, so let's regulate the media. But I have always said that when the public push for the regulation of the media, when the politician jumps on that bandwagon, he is going to be looking at his own interest.
Right.
And he would be regulating the media, not necessarily to satisfy the public, but for their own selfish interest. And before the public realize what they have done, it is too late. The media has been regulated. Nothing can be done about it.
So let's look back at the period before the repeal of the criminal libel law. Would you say professionalism has improved or declined following the repeal?
Well, some have argued that professionalism has declined, but I don't want to say that without any hard facts or any empirical evidence. But from my own observation, of course, I have been a media practitioner for close to 20 years now. And clearly, when we were in journalism school in the mid-90s, 95, 96, thereabout, and we looked at those ahead of us and the way they do things, and you look at the way things are being done now, there is a lot of difference. But some would argue that it's because now there is a proliferation of media houses and all those things. Now we have introduced a lot of these local stations and all those things. So that's why probably some of these things are happening. But frankly, comparing what used to be the case and now, there has been a lot of avoidable excesses and mistakes on the part of the media. But is that sufficient for us to say that they're not doing their work properly? Yes, some of them are not doing their job the way they should do.
So as a media law expert, do you feel really that more restrictions are needed to whip journalists into shape?
It wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't really make any difference. Because, you know, when the criminal libel was there, did we not still have media houses doing these things? In any case, when it comes to media freedom, media independence, the freedom of the speech and all those things, it's a constitutional guarantee. It's a fundamental thing. Now, of course, the very constitution that gives that right says it goes with responsibility. Now, those responsibilities have been clearly defined, and the only time to get away with doing things that is against somebody's fundamental human right is if it's in the public interest. There is an overriding public interest. That's one of the things. Now, this responsibility goes along the lines of you trying to just to be ethical and all. Now, if you don't do that, what then is going to happen is that people have options. There is a civil, there is a civil route where somebody can sue you for defamation and all those things, libel. What the criminal libel did was just to take out the criminalization of speech.
Okay.
But the provisions are still there for people. If you feel that somebody has attacked your reputation unjustifiably, there are routes for you to pursue to get some redress.
Right.
Is that route sufficient? Is that not sufficient? And therefore, people are asking for the media to be regulated. If you start the regulation, where is it going to end?
Right. So
if you're not careful, you will go on regulating until you dwindle very powerful institutions. Because let's not forget that a lot of things that have been exposed in this country has been done by the media.
By the media. And so restricting the media will not make any difference. So what will make a difference? I mean, you admit that indeed there are some bad nuts.
Yeah, what would make a difference, Aisha, is we need to continue building the capacity of media, media practitioners.
All right.
Because the industry is changing. The dynamics of journalism is changing. And therefore, we need to constantly be updating ourselves and training the people to be abreast with the changing trend. And, there are certain things, culture is very, 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 very dynamic.
Right.
And so what used to be accepted in the past will not necessarily be accepted this time around. And the media has to constantly be operating within those lines. Education is key, but self-regulation is very, very, very important. Right. And one of the things I think that the public can do is when you see that the media practitioner is behaving unethically, you have an option. You have the option of punishing them where it would hurt them most. In other words, you could choose not to be buying their newspaper or
not to listen to their channel or watching their...
These are all the options.
Right.
And if you think that all those things are not sufficient and you think that they've done something that is unacceptable, there are rules. There are rules in place for you to pursue them for redress. But for us to say let's regulate, we need to be very cautious of that. Maybe we will get to the point where some level of regulation might be considered,
right.
But I think we should tread cautiously in order not to play into the hands of people who would regulate for their own purposes,
right.
And those purposes will not inure to the benefit of the general public. But Aisha, one thing I want to state before probably we leave, we go, is that regulation, this demand by the public is not new. Even in the UK, when the Sun, one of Robert Murdoch's empires, when they were hacking into people's private telephones and doing things that was unacceptable,
exactly.
The public also demanded that same thing.
I remember very well.
It was as a result of that they set up the Leveson inquiry.
Right.
And one of the things that the Leveson inquiry said is that maybe they need to find a way of self-regulation.
Right.
But if the media doesn't regulate itself properly, and if we fail to be adhering to our basic principles of ethical conduct,
and it gets to the
hands
exactly, and it gets to the point that lawmakers decide to restrict us, then it means that we are in trouble. we're extremely grateful for your time. Tanko Mohammed is a media law lecturer with the Ghana Institute of Journalism. We've been talking about a survey that's calling for restrictions. In fact, the survey said that more of the respondents are saying that even though journalists in Ghana have performed well in terms of professionalism and promoting democracy, they are thinking that the media needs more restrictions. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for your time. Good evening.